What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to Cow Architecture. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about 9 steps how to pass the architecture registration exams, or the A.R.Es. Before I get into the steps, I just want you to know that it doesn't matter how long you take.
It doesn't matter.
Could take 9 days, could take 9 years. Doesn't matter, as long as you finish them. And I want to give you 9 easy steps that you can do today to feel more confident in your soon-to-be or current test-taking journey. I started this channel because I felt like I had some tips and tricks that could help you in your licensure journey. And if you find this video helpful or enjoyable in any way, please make sure to subscribe and like. It helps out a bunch, and we can get this out to as many people as possible. And let's begin. Starting out at number 1 is just buy the test and start today. I bought all 3 tests at the start and even failed the last 2. But it was the fact that I scheduled it and I set the goal and I started studying that day. I would say that this goes true for everyone, is to buy the test and start studying today. Even after you schedule the test, you're able to reschedule them and try to make it work with what you have going on in your life at that time. But in the end, you just want to make yourself feel accountable for the test that you scheduled and really make an effort to give it all you can. And this leads me to the next step, number 2. Make a realistic game plan and stick to it. And that is all about holding yourself accountable. In my case, I had a spreadsheet and it talked about everything that I did that day, if I took a practice exam, what percentage I got, or even what type of concepts I was learning that day. It was just anything that I could write down just to show that to myself I was making an effort and I was making a little bit of progress every single day. And after a few weeks, a few months, I got to see everything that I was starting to do, and I really had the what you call snowball momentum. And I was just snowballing and going off of that previous progress I made, and it just started to feel really good. In terms of game plan, I started out with a medium to hard test, and that's the third one, programming and analysis. I thought that that would be a good starting point because I had a little bit of experience in practice with that, and I thought it was not too hard, but also not too easy. And I thought it would be a good test to roll into the next 2, which are the hardest ones, PPD and PDD. And so I made that game plan and I scheduled the first 3 tests right in a row and started studying. I ended up even failing the last 2. I was a little bit down, but I rescheduled and I tried to keep that confidence still up, and I just kept trucking. In terms of game plan, I would say a good time period for studying is 4 to 8 weeks. So some of the shorter or easier ones, like construction evaluation, you might only need 3 weeks. I only took 3 weeks and took a week off even. That was during the contracts. But like for PDD, you might want 8 to 10 weeks because there's a lot of concepts, over 1,000 concepts that you need to know and draw from. And so that might be the test that you take a lot more time in. So you bought the test, you have the game plan. The next step, number 3, is to make the A.R.Es your life. You want to get it done as soon as possible, and you want to make sure that you're giving it all you got. In my case, I wanted to get done as soon as I could. I did not want to be a 35-year-old architect married with kids. It made sense for me to start studying right after graduate school because I was still in that mindset of studying, test taking, and that education environment. And I just needed to shift my focus from design to that real practice of architecture, which is the A.R.E tests. And I made it this far, so I might as well finish it. I had my own routine where I studied in the morning right before work and also studied at night if I needed to, with the weekends being practice exams. One thing that worked for me is that I wanted to be as efficient as possible, and I also wanted to get done as quick as possible. So I would listen to Black Spectacle's mock exams when I was eating, when I was in the car, whatever I could. I had the A.R.E apps on my phone. If I had any questions about concepts or anything, I was constantly looking up forums, searching anything that would benefit me in any way in the current test or the test that I'm going to be taking. Like I said, I wanted to get done as quick as possible. So that meant trying to learn all the concepts, even if it was a bunch, as quick as possible, and use that extra time if I finished it to really refine and focus on the topics that I thought were going to be on the test that I was going to take. I started the journey, I made the A.R.Es my life, and the next thing that you will need, number 4, is a good support system. And that doesn't matter who it is. It could be a family, friend, wife, girlfriend, even a coworker, or even someone online on a forum. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
As long as you have people around you that care about you and help to make this individual and sometimes lonely journey feel a little bit more rewarding during the process. At one point, I even reached out to a Black Spectacles consultant and had an hour-long meeting right after I failed 2 tests, and that really helped because I got to talk to an expert in the field and someone who is doing study guides for these tests all the time, and she really helped me kind of calm down and see the bigger picture. Number 5 is figuring out what material works for you. So in my case, I don't really like to read. That's not me. So I knew that the best way for me was to do practice exams. And I wanted to simulate the test as much as I could. So Black Spectacles was the best study guide for me in getting the best simulation possible. And after each practice exam, I was able to look at all the questions that I got right and wrong and study those instead. So kind of reverse engineering. Instead of studying and then trying to get tested on something maybe you might have studied, I studied on things that I knew I was going to get tested on because I had belief that Black Spectacles did have content that was going to mirror the actual test as much as possible. Another thing that worked for me that might work for you is I had a living Word document of every single practice exam question that I ever saw. I put it all into a master Word doc and was able to Control or Command F any type of keyword that I was wondering at that time. And it was the act of actually writing down each question, each answer, and then why each answer was right or wrong. That really helped me remember and put this studying and learning into my long-term memory. The best thing about this living Word doc is that the A.R.Es are my life now, so I could access it whenever and wherever I wanted to. Some of the best advice I ever got during the test was number 6. Remember who is asking you the questions. Who is asking you the questions is A.R.E. And according to A.R.E, they are in this utopian bubble. They are in this perfect world. It's not real practice. And they're asking you questions in their perfect little bubble. So if you keep that in mind and you don't infer anything based on your experience or other things that you've seen in the real world, and you just stay in that academic utopian bubble, it'll be a little bit easier for you to identify what the questions A.R.E is actually asking you. Try to remember which stage in the design process you are. You could get the exact same question at the beginning of a project as you would at the end, but the answers might be totally different. That's why it's such a benefit if you can teach your brain how to put all of this new stuff that you're learning into your long-term memory. And one good way to do that is everything that you learn in one day, try to recap that in 2 to 3 days. Go over the exact same stuff that you studied 2 to 3 days ago, and it will really help to get that into your long-term memory. This step is all about remembering who's actually asking you the questions and thinking that this is a standardized test, and sometimes your test-taking abilities might actually outweigh your architectural knowledge. Number 7, don't second guess yourself. More often than not, your first intuition is correct. In the case of these tests, sometimes there's only 100 questions, and each question is equal exactly the same. In most cases, you only need 65 out of 100 questions correct. That means that every 3 you can get 1 wrong, which during the test it might feel like a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, it really isn't that much. Now, number 8 is intern experience helps, but it's not necessary. I would say that it helps to have the experience first in the real world and then study and then take the test on it. But sometimes if you don't have any experience in the real world and you're studying this for the first time, it might actually help you because you're not in the real world. You're in this utopian A.R.E bubble and you're a little bit shielded from things that you saw in the real world. So don't get discouraged if you don't have any internship hours in the test that you're taking. It might actually benefit you in some cases. And number 9 is to stay positive. I failed 2 out of my first 3 tests. Looking back, I was kind of in a funk, to be honest. It was tough for me to go about normal life knowing that I had just failed. I felt at sometimes I wasn't as good as I thought I was at this. But I just had to remember that I scheduled the test. I'm not going to stop, and I'm just going to keep going. And actually, I'm going to use the fire from that fail and remember that for next time when I retake the test, because next time I'm going to kill it on the test. So I know how it feels. Sometimes it can feel temporarily lonely because this is such an individual task, but just remember there are thousands of people out there taking the same test, and you can always connect with them on the internet or with people around you taking the test too. These tests aren't supposed to be hard if you've studied. The biggest thing I'd say is to have confidence in your ability to take the test like you have practiced thousands of times. And during the test, you have a little bit of time before you start. Use that to take some deep breaths and really try to relax and get into a state that you're ready to kill the test. A great tip that I got was get out of this emotional state and get into a more logical state by counting in multiples of 7. So 7, 14, 21, 28. And you start getting into that mindset of the logical thinking, because all these questions are very logical. If you read them and figure out exactly what they're asking, you'll know the answer. So there you go. Those are 9 easy steps that you can take today to pass all of your A.R.Es. And overall, I'd say that these tests really did prepare me for the real world, probably a lot more than school did. And this is not something that you're going to forget about right after the test. These tests are the start of your architectural career, and they're a really good baseline for knowing what to do in situations in your actual practice. And starting out as an architect, you're not running your own firm yet, and so it's really a great experience to take tests in practice management and project management, because those are going to be the tasks that you're going to be doing in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. With that said, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit the subscribe and like button if you enjoyed the video. In the comment section down below, Leave a comment with what works best for you when studying for the AREs. In future videos, I can dive deeper into each section of the AREs and talk exactly about what you might need to know and what you might save some time on not studying. Until next time, see you in the next video.